Go ahead. The number is contained in the documentation here. This goes to a Google Drive that has a lot of what I'm going to show today. And I will upload my presentation after I finish marking it up. I will upload it to the drive so that you can look at it and refresh your memory when you get home. One of the things that Bluebeam can do is allow multiple people to collaborate on the same, to collaborate on the same document. And the session I set up to do that is Bluebeam Studio hosted in Australia. So I am Rick Nimtz. I work at the University of Notre Dame. I've been there for 43 years. And one of the things that Karen said this morning is when you are trying to think about what you want to do, ask yourself what you're good at and what you like to do. And when I was in high school, I had drafting, and I really loved drafting. Back then it was with pencil and paper. And so when Bluebeam came out, it was like, this is for me. And I'm nowhere near an expert. We just use it on construction projects. How many people have dabbled in Bluebeam at all? And tried it out and maybe, I have handouts up here, 2 pieces of paper. So I'm not gonna, this isn't a how to use Bluebeam, it's what can Bluebeam do for you. So this, what you're seeing on the screen is Bluebeam. And all these documents were created with Bluebeam. These are equipment blocks. They are objects. So I could copy that and then paste it on something else. It's there. And then I could resize it if I want to. A problem that we had was we had a classroom, or it was a computer lab that they wanted to turn into a classroom, a teaching classroom. These are photographs of what it looked like as a computer lab. There was no display that every person could see. And the requirements were to get 50 people in the room so that everybody can see. And a desk row people have to be able to pair up, so you can't have odd numbers of seats. This is the room that they came from. It's an engineering program. And it was just, you can tell it's put together by engineers because they've got cables hanging from the ceiling, which I love, but our classroom people don't like that.
It's cheap.
It is cheap. So in order to do this, our facilities department has building floor plans. This is an excerpt of a floor plan that our facilities department had. And what I did was I used this as a model to build other things, like this reflected ceiling plan. There was no reflected ceiling plan in existence. The closest thing they had was when the building was built in 1993. It was back when drawing was done with pencil, and they ran them through the ammonia style printer to make duplicates that would last about 5 years. Sometimes you could get 10 years out of them if you stored them in the dark. The facilities department scanned those, and this is a PDF of what they scanned. And then, so I used a combination of the outline from the floor plan and this in order to create the reflected ceiling plan. And the way I did this was I started out with the perimeter and then literally just filled in all these lines. So when you do documentation, and this is on your sheet, there are some best practices you want to adhere to. And you want to have a plan for your documents. If you've ever noticed, the sheets in an architectural plan are numbered a certain way. And there, I put a link here to show that. Bluebeam has the ability to bring up websites. You notice all I did was click on there. And this is the site that talks about how to do documentation. So what does it actually look like to draw stuff with Bluebeam? What I'm using is, this is a paid version of Bluebeam. I believe now they're running on a subscription model. So this is our document, this is a sheet. What I'm looking at is down at the bottom, there's no scale. And there's some other stuff I'll talk about later. So one of the things I wanted to do was have a decent looking title block. And this happens to be for 17 by 11 paper. And one of the cool things about Bluebeam is that I can take an object like this rectangle, and if I draw this rectangle over here, which might be hard to read, it tells me the starting point of that rectangle is at 1.6 inches. I'm going to change that to 1.0. And you just saw it move over. And then I'll change the y coordinate. And that moved. And so I have an 11 or a 17-inch piece of paper. I want a big border around that. How can I do that easily? Well, how big of a border do I want? Let's say I want a 1/2 inch. So I will make this width 16 inches. And then I could make the height, and then I adjust it and place it right in the piece of paper that I want. And notice that no scale is set. But if I click on it, I can see that it's 16 inches wide. So some of the things that you can do with this is, this was an example of the floor plan that I got from 1993. It was in 2 pieces because the building is long and it wouldn't have fit on a piece of paper. So basically where this lab was, they split the building in half. And so I used a variety of methods to take the 2 halves and erase what I didn't want and meld them together to do this. And if you're looking real close, you can see in the middle, things don't really line up. One thing Bluebeam can do is you can, you were talking about using it to measure. And so how can we do that? Well, a 2-foot by 2-foot ceiling tile is 24 inches by 24 inches. So notice there's no scale set for this drawing, but I'm going to set a scale. And so I'm going to do a custom scale. And I am going to calibrate, and it says pick 2 points. So we know that this from here to here is going to be 4 feet. So I will do this and tell it that that is 4 feet. I screwed that up, I did the 4 feet wrong. When you download your copy of Bluebeam, it may not look like this because Bluebeam is very customizable as far as where the menus and things go. Okay. Who's wrong with that? Now I'm going to check my dimension. So the architect has shown that this is 10 foot. So I will grab the dimension tool and make a line and and that shows 9 feet, 11 1/4 inches. That's good enough. That's gonna tell me what I need to know. So now this drawing is scaled, and it's scaled in something weird, but that's okay. Another thing that I found a great use with Bluebeam is, right, I have this floor plan here, and I have this one that I drew. And I want this to be the same size as that. And there are a couple ways to do it. We could measure the dimension there and measure the dimension there, and what's the difference, and do a division, and then set the scale that way. But that's a lot of math. So I'm looking at this big X, which is a chase for pipes and electric. So I'll put that about there, and then grab this. And unfortunately, it doesn't track it when I grab it. So that's pretty close. Another thing is, have you ever gotten into a situation where you're designing a room and you're going to put a display in and you wonder what it's going to look like on the wall? Well, that is an elevation. I don't have any elevations in this example. One thing I've done is you can draw a rectangle to a scale. And here's a rectangle, and it's telling me that it's 5 by 2 inches. So let's make this 16 by 9. One of the things that I get frustrated about is that I can't grab this empty part. So what I'm going to do is select this, and I'm going to fill it with gray, and I'm going to turn that gray to 20%. So it's translucent, but it gives me a place to grab here. So what I'm going to do is dimension this, and it's going to want to scale, and I'm just going to pick one at random. We'll do a 1/2 inch equals a foot. So now dimension this. And everybody talks about displays with diagonal measurements. So that's what we're going to do. Got a diagonal there. And let's make these so that people can see them. Make it a bigger font size. There, 48 is big enough. So that shows us that it's a 36-foot TV. So here comes the magic. What I do is I select the entire shape and then right-click and I group it. Now it acts as one object. I can move the thing at once. Since I have the dimensions in there, when I resize this object, the dimensions resize. So if I'm just doing something that's quick and dirty, I could, what would a 6-foot TV look like? It's a 6-foot screen versus a 10-foot screen. If you have any questions or get lost or I go too fast or something, just let me know.
Where did you have the dimension line tool? You drew the line to measure it?
It can be found in 2 places. On my computer, it's up at the top. right here, and it's also under tools, under measure, and length. Area is another choice. Let me do areas to show you what that's like. Let's say I'm gonna get, this isn't really a place, but we'll just see what the area would be if it was. And this says it's 52.85 square feet. This drawing is one that I did to show where a display would look in a huddle room. And it's a room that seats like maybe 6 people. I only had a floor plan, which is the one at the top. And if you're going to locate a display on a wall, you need to know where it's going to go left and right on that wall and how high up it's going to go. So that meant it needed an elevation. And a way that I discovered to quickly do an elevation is to take the floor plan and take lines and extend them down. And then I had a reflected ceiling plan that showed me how tall the ceiling was. And then from there, I could put the floor in, and then there's this little bump out thing which corresponds to here. And some light fixtures, and I made up a tool with a table and a display, and I was able to put that in, and then I could show the dimension of how high I wanted the center of that box and how far from a permanent wall that goes. And here's another example of the same thing. It's a little more complicated. It's an elevator lobby. Here's the elevator. The display goes here. But it was the same kind of thing. I just extended the lines down. I found the door, extended that down, and then just drew all that in. For when we put displays in, we put a Chief PAC 526 in the wall. And it's got a bunch of places that wires can go, so where does that go? So what we did years ago was we standardized on a box configuration. And so everything we put in is going to have power over here and data over here. This particular elevation was for a student center. Yeah, that won't go away. Okay. This is that student center. And the colors are zones of audio. And then the purpose of this plan for the AV world is to show where displays go and where scheduling panels outside the room go and where digital signs go. So the green indicates a digital sign. Or no, that indicates a display. The blue or the purple color indicates a digital sign, and then this blue is the scheduling panel. And I used Bluebeam to count how many I was putting in. And the way that that's done is Bluebeam has a box of tools. And I have different tools for different projects. One of the things that you can do is you can count as you put the. So now I have this, and let's say I'm placing displays. And now I know I have 5 displays in that project. And the nice thing is, if I take away a display, my numbers reset. And what I did on this particular project, I created little custom icons to show what a display looked like. So far, so good. And what I did with this plan was I printed it out on 11 by 17, and that's what I took to the field when I needed to look at the job progress and how things were going. I also used it to show where the AV rack went in the room.
Show who though? Who else would see this plan?
The project architect, the networking, and the electricians. And it's the elevations are things that the project architect specifically asked for. First they want to know what size TV's going in, and then they want to know where it's going to get located. And we did choose an integrator yet, so it's up to me to decide what size and where they went. And so then that's when I came up with these drawings.
Yeah, the integrator, I get it. Typically, when I've worked with the construction companies and the architects, they want you to point where, or mark up their plans so they can update their own print and they wouldn't work on something that I put.
Well, and that's what I did. This is a furniture plan. And you can see in this huddle room, this black that says TV by others. Okay, that shape and TV by others was already on the plans from the architect. And the reason I used the furniture plan was so that we could see what kind of arrangement things would be and what would make the most sense. So there they've got a TV in there. And they wanted something in there. And they put these in. Most of the time, the people we work with, it's an approximate location. They want it somewhere kind of centered on that wall. And then it's up to us to say where.
And probably what size.
And what size. You know, get the conversation, what are you going to do with this? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I would bet that somebody in here is colorblind to some degree. And one of the frustrating things that people that have color blindness is that they're told to go to the gray, you know, the beige house, and all they see is a gray house. They don't know. So when I laid out these audio zones with the different colors, knowing it, these two colors of purple, even I'm not colorblind, and those look pretty close to me.
Yeah, they're really close.
So what I did is I chose a different border for each type of color. And that way, somebody with limited color acuity, or if this document got printed in black and white, that would still show up and it would still be meaningful. So please, when you're doing your own stuff, keep in mind that there are people that can't see colors the same way we can. This, to make the key, what I did was I just brought an object over and placed it there, and then, you know, this ceiling microphone. So I showed how to mark up to exact scale. That was the other page where I had the rectangle with the dimensions. As I changed the rectangle, since it was a group, the dimension changed. One thing that frustrated me was the alignment of objects. And let's say that I want them all to be aligned to here. So what I would do is I would select them and I would say align to top edge, and it wasn't what I thought it would be. The way that Bluebeam decides which one is your reference is the first one that you click. So let's say I want everything by left edge on this microphone. So I click it and then start selecting the others. And then align to left edge. And there it is. And let's say I want those evenly distributed up and down. There's a command for that. Now they're evenly distributed. If I have a bunch of objects and I want to make another set of objects, there are two ways to do it. You can do this. You could copy and then paste. That does it. Another way to do it is have your object selected, press Option, not Option, press Control. There it is, duplicated everything. Even the text over here, which I didn't want duplicated. But you can erase that.
You had noted that you had used Visio in the past.
Mhm.
I've used that quite a bit. It looks a lot like it. What are the advantages in here that you find over Visio? Do all these icons and everything come standard with it, or?
No, actually, like these tool sets, no. Avixa has they've come up with an ANSI standard for AV,
Symbols?
yeah, the AV symbols. And that's what these in the, I don't even know what color that is. And they didn't have a Bluebeam set, so we bought their tools and I recreated all of these. So this is a data port, and when I built the tools, I put a tooltip on there so that I could tell what it was.
Is there a symbols database that you can download and work from?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
There are some pre-done tool sets. And on your sheet, on MCUAV 01, I should have talked about this first. I show how to get more information and training. One of the best is Chapter 2. It's an online forum of people that use Bluebeam all the time, and there's some pretty smart people on there. I have found a Reddit subreddit review to be pretty helpful too. And Bluebeam has training tools. They have videos. And Liz Larson has a blog that I've heard is very good. I haven't actually used it. Chapter 2 is started by a guy, he's like within 300 miles of us. He's like in this area. And he has webinars, and I signed into one. I thought it was going to be a presentation webinar, one-to-many, nobody knows who's there. It was just he and I. And he's like, well, this is all we're going to have. What do you need to know? What problems are you having? And some of these tips I learned from him during that session. He took control of my screen and I showed him stuff I was doing, and we talked about easier ways to do it. And is just a win-win and it's free. I have found some outlines of people that I've used, because a lot of times that's handy to try and visualize, you know, how big is a person in relation to something. I'm gonna now go into the collaborative nature. And this is the bottom. I wanted the studio that's in Australia, the one that ends in .au. I'm gonna sign in. And even though Bluebeam is a paid, the full version of Bluebeam is paid, when you download it, you get the full version for 30 days, and then it goes to what they call a view only. One of the things you can do with the view only is what I'm about to do here. If you don't already have an account on this server, you create the account, and it sends an email that verifies you and all that. We started using Bluebeam when Notre Dame built a huge addition to the football stadium. And the contractor, Barton Mallow, used Bluebeam to review documentation. So instead of everybody gathering around the table and nobody can see what the red line's doing, it was all on Bluebeam. And to avoid confusion, I'm gonna quit all of this.
Is there a way to export this into like a Revit file for architects that want things in Revit?
I don't know. If they have a way to convert PDF into Revit without retracing it.
There are versions of Revu that have specific CAD kind of connections to them, but I don't know of any way to do that directly into Revit. It really would depend on kind of what is the 3D requirements.
Yeah, and our mechanical guys do a lot of stuff actually in SolidWorks.
Yeah.
And so I think that can export into Revit, but it's always on like a case by case basis, what whoever you're working with wants.
So what I just did is I went to the studio icon and I logged into the Australia version of Studio, and you can see that number 800-899-759. And you know, it kind of looks the same, but if I click on this, I see that it's grayed, which means that it's locked. One of the things that Bluebeam does is it gives you a history of everything anybody does. The way we used this was they would send out a document set and we would go through and review it. So we would have not only the AV and the networking, but it would also be the housekeeping, people who do housekeeping, security, plumbers, mechanical, the fire department. And our facilities people set up tool sets where each discipline would have their own color. And the engineer review is this bluish color. Ours is almost bluish color, but it's not white. And that way they know who marked up the drawing. Another way is to, you can double click it, and it should have brought me to it. But it didn't. So let me show how to do a markup. So I've got who did this. and it's highlighted down here. It shows that it came from me, and it's red in color. From this list, I believe I can change the color. I just changed the line color to green, and the cloud color I can change to if I wanted to. What they would do at review time is, I've done this in person and I've done it on Zoom, it works really well on Zoom, is they'll sort the comments by the author. And they'll say, okay, you've got these comments, and here they are. Tell us what they mean. What I did is I click on a comment, and it finds it in that document. Whether that document is the topmost document or not. So it found this, which is a comment, which is what I did before I uploaded this document set to the cloud. One bad thing about the cloud is multiple people comment on the same thing, and you could have two people commenting at the same time, and their comments, one person's comment will get on top of the other, and then it'll be lost. And so somebody either has to move their comment, or they'll have to dig down here. So I click on this and I see increased bottom margin, so that title block looks a little bit better. When you do something in Bluebeam, actually let me go through a couple of others. This is a real drawing that I did for our students at spring break. The room that I was showing in the slideshow before we started has a bunch of computer desks, and their wires that go from one to the other, and the wires are sloppy. And so I put together, I told them what they're going to be doing. They're going to move the wires out of the way, the equipment's securely mounted, the keyboard and the mouse has to come to here, the monitor has to be able to go all the way down and all the way up, and we bought power outlets that are going to go on each table. So then told them how to move things out of the way, and then I put a diagram of the edge of the desk with a piece of equipment, found these pictures of those sticky mounts they could put wire ties through, and just kind of drew a line there. And then showed them where the power outlets needed about. There had to be one for each pair of desks, and they have to be under the desk.
And close to the edge.
Close to the edge. So I had an example of one is good, one is bad. We have a good crew, I think they'll do a good job. A drawing needs to have a date, a person who did it, a description of the drawing. It's real nice to have a drawing number. A lot of times the final number doesn't get added until later. And revisions are handy too. So if you do a major revision, then you put that in. And an example of revisions is this floor plan that I did, and I just kind of named the revisions there. A lot of these drawings I've done for me so that I can be able to talk intelligently to somebody. I can get a room and I can model, will this work, will that work, type of thing. So with these Bluebeam sessions, the studio session, it tracks who is in it and who's doing what. I created another account called Rick Jr., just so it wouldn't be me, so that I could make some changes. But this is available to anybody that can log on and knows this number. And whatever you put on there is going to be on there unless you take it off. But you can feel free to experiment and do what you want with it. So, one of the things I wanted to do, we needed to create a block diagram that showed how equipment got interconnected. This is for the room that used to be the computer lab. Sometimes this just runs a little bit slow. I don't know why. So anybody that's been in AV more than a month or two has probably seen diagrams like this. One of the things Bluebeam won't do is when I move a block, it won't move the wires with it. That's something that Visio will do.
Right.
And the way that I created these blocks is I used a spreadsheet program. First thing I did is I grabbed the specs or the manual or something that shows what the ins and outs were of the particular device. So let's say that let's do something easy, it's a power strip. Power strip with USB. And so my power strip is going to have an output, and then it's going to have an input.
So do you put the name of the port in there, or do you put the connector?
I am creating this on a blank sheet. I can do what I want.
Okay, no, that's fine.
And you can do what you want depending on what you do, on the way you want it to look. So we'll make it so that all the lines are turned on, and I want this centered, so I will merge cells. And the same thing with here. Merge horizontally. And then I want this to be in the middle. All right, now how do I go from this to that? What I do is then I will print it as a PDF. And under formatting, I will not show grid lines. So it's the current sheet. Do this. I'm regularly going to print to that printer. I'm going to save it as a PDF. And it's going to save in downloads, which is fine. So we're done with here. And then I will use the, I don't even know the name of the tool. I'm sorry, I really only know the shortcut, which is G, which I interpret as grab. And so this is kind of like making a screenshot. What I'm doing is I'm copying this to the clipboard, and then I can go over to my other document. Let's find some blank space, how about right here. And there I've got an equipment block, which looks pretty, you know, I didn't put the bold text in and change the fonts and all that, but it's something that can be here, and when we start drawing lines on that, people are gonna know what that is, where it goes, and what it does. So if you can't get equipment blocks from manufacturers, I know that we use D-Tools for a while, and they have built-in equipment blocks for a lot of their stuff, and so we use some of that, but we stopped using D-Tools because it's really, really complicated, and you really have to be committed to it. And so now this is how we create our own equipment blocks.
One thing, you know, in my experience making blocks, I really do like to put the exact same text that you're gonna read on the device and the connector type on there in this pictographic format, because like, you know, if you're working with student workers or people who aren't at, like, you know, for like engineer level, you can have like a block and just put some lines, but to have a little bit of something that's gonna kind of ground this abstract drawing into reality, I think is worth the time and effort. But I think, you know, it is the kind of thing where, you know, if you have a pre-made library, like you can do all your stuff, and then it's the one thing it's not. Like,
We have a homegrown system that we created, that's similar to the D-Tools. One thing I do like about ours is we color coded a little bit. So all the video connectors are blue, all the video cables are blue on the drawing, all the audio is green, and all the control cables, which more and more things are just control cables these days, are red, is how we have it. And then actually the block, the title part of each block, we color code those to mean some things too. So if it's white, it's a brand new device we're installing. But if it's like existing, it turns a certain color. If it's a device that we're actually removing from the thing, we turn it red. Or then we got a couple other colors that we can arbitrarily mean whatever we want, depending upon what the project is. Like if it's a big video switch that has a bunch of cards in it, like I'll probably usually have all of those devices be blue, but they're actually individual devices so that when we run some reports, it comes out correctly. But yeah.
I'll show you quickly how to modify an existing drawing. Bluebeam, the things you see here are in two domains, for lack of a better word. One is, it's a live object that can move around, and it's a vector object, so I can make it as big as I want and it'll still look good. The other is what they call flattened. And if you try and select it and it doesn't move, then it's flattened. And so the only way to get rid of that is to use the eraser tool. Well, actually there are two ways to get rid of it. You could create a square and fill it with white, and you could turn your line to 0 point so that you don't see it. And then for all intents and purposes, it's gone. A better way to do it, because even though it's there and you can't see it, it's still there. Which, when it renders on another machine, you'll actually see it, and then you'll see the white block go over it. So the thing to do would be to erase what's there. And then take yours and put it on top of it. And then if you had any connections that were going there, then you would have to erase the lines. And I know that's not really elegant, but, you know, to me it makes sense because I grew up in the pencil and paper era, where if you wanted to delete something, you went like this with a piece of rubber, and then it was gone. So we've got just a few minutes left. Are there any specific things or any questions anybody wanted to ask?
What's the biggest difference between the paid and free version of Bluebeam?
The paid version, number one, you have the ability to create a studio session. And you also have the ability to open up any PDF and edit that PDF. And after 30 days, that goes away. But you were saying that you're using it for measuring.
So if you have a floor plan, because you're not actually editing the drawing itself, you're just measuring it, you can do that on the free version.
Yeah. And one of the things I said I would cover is how to use take a cheap tablet to the field and have your electronic drawings with you. Have the paid version of Bluebeam, create a studio session with the drawings that you want in the field. On your cheap tablet, you install a demo copy of Bluebeam, which will forever be read-only, but you can read studio sessions and mark them up. Then that's what you take to the field. If you did not get a handout, or if you want more handouts, there's some at the front of the room.
One other thing I just wanted to point out that Rick had covered about that kind of manifest of the comments. For folks that are having trouble getting people engaged or wanting to kind of get folks to make decisions, the really cool thing about how that function works is that when people interact with the tool, you have the records of everything they say, and you can actually have them mark finished when they're done and then be done. So you can use it to really enforce deadlines, and then you can have that whole manifest of comments and work through them. It's really great when you get into a project with an architect where they're really efficient in doing that, because they'll go through that list, and time is money, so we're running through that list, and then they can make notes and very quickly get a large cohort of people engaged. But also, if you're having trouble getting folks to engage with materials or kind of prompting them for reviews, you can use some of the parts and the tools that track that to kind of help facilitate that a little bit. It's a really cool part of that product, and it really kind of helps folks, if you're visual or looking at spreadsheets, there's different kinds of ways to get to those manifested comments.
On the sheet, I have my contact information in the title block. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm also happy to learn things, because Bluebeam is this big, I've covered this much. I use this much. So, I hope this helped. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.